Hare Krishna. Welcome all of you to our Bhagavad Gita weekly reading session. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes.
So we were reading Bhagavad Gita as it is by His Divine Grace Abhay Charan Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So from 31st January we have started this course, and daily we are reading for about 20-25 minutes from the beginning of this book Bhagavad Gita as it is. And during last 5 days we have read setting the scene and preface. We have completed that. So today we will go through as a recap of this. So this will be the more or less setup. Every 5 days of the week, during the weekdays we will read, and whatever portion will be covering on Saturday we'll do a quick recap. And every day in the evening we are also posting quizzes. So I'm happy to see your participation. Okay, and that's really in this way we can scrutinizingly read Bhagavad Gita and take the essential learning from this transcendental book. Let's see. Bhagavad Gita is part of a great epic, Mahabharata. Mahabharata is one of the largest epic in the world's history. So much so that it is 7 times of Iliad and Odyssey put together, who are considered to be very famous literatures in Western culture. And Mahabharata is very famous in India and also outside of it. Although Bhagavad Gita is part of Mahabharata, but it is also widely read by itself, because it contains all the philosophical conclusions of the Vedic canon. It comes in Vishnu Parva of Mahabharata. Mahabharata consists of 18 parvas, so it comes in Vishnu Parva. And Mahabharata has been written almost 5,000 years back by a great rishi or sage, Srila Vyasadeva, who was the literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord himself. And Bhagavad Gita is spoken by the Supreme Lord himself. Bhagavad Gita has been spoken by the Supreme Lord himself to his dear friend Arjuna, who is also great devotee of Supreme Lord. Krishna was not an ordinary person. He was Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was the Bhagavan. Just before the onset of war, this has been spoken, and this is a greatest philosophical and religious conversation took place just before the war. Mahabharata was named from the king called Bharata. So there was a king who was ruling this earth named Bharata long ago. He was so famous that after him, this land was named as Bharatavarsha. And in that lineage, King Kuru also appeared. And in that Kuru dynasty, there were two brothers, Dhritarashtra and Pandu. So basically, this Mahabharata was containing these family disputes of these two brothers in the lineage of Kuru dynasty. And the pillar of that Kuru dynasty at that point in time was Bhishmadev, who was grandfather of Pandu and Kauravas, Pandavas and Kauravas. Who are Pandavas and Kauravas? Kauravas are 100 sons of Dhritarashtra, and Pandavas are 5 sons of Pandu. Being elder in the family, means between Dhritarashtra and Pandu, they were two brothers, and Dhritarashtra was elder to Pandu. So by the law, Dhritarashtra should inherit the kingdom. He should be the king. He is the actual legal heir. But he was blind. He born blind. So he was unfit to be king. That's the reason Pandu became the king of the Bharatvarsha at that point in time, okay, whose capital was Hastinapur. Dhritarashtra was having 100 sons, and eldest of them was Duryodhana. In the other hand, Pandu, who was a younger brother to Dhritarashtra, he had 5 sons named Yudhishthir, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadeva. But Duryodhana always envying towards the other sons of Pandu. Pandu died in very early age. Hence, Dhritarashtra was taking care of all these 105 sons, 100 sons of himself and 5 sons of his brother. And all of them grew up in the same royal comfort. And they were being trained by the great spiritual master of that point in time, Dronacharya, who was very skillful in various military arts. And Bhishmadev, who was the dear grandfather of the children's, he was teaching them all these moral codes, politics, and various other teachings. But Duryodhana, instead of disposed to Pandava in a happy and affectionate way, he was always envying, and he was having a great hatred towards them. So much so that he was always trying to bring them trouble, and not only trouble, many times he attempted to kill them. And on the other hand, Dhritarashtra, who was helpless with his greed and excessive desire to have the kingdom, although he was a caretaker kind of and so-called king, but he was having a desire for his sons, especially Duryodhana, to inherit the kingdom, not the sons of Pandu. So among all these 105 sons, Yudhishthir is the eldest. So in that rule, in the second generation, Yudhishthir should be the king. But Dhritarashtra has a deep desire for his son Duryodhana to be king. So that's the reason he was blindly supporting Duryodhana in all his wicked deeds. No matter how much they tried, they were the Pandavas, no matter how much Duryodhana tried, he was always unsuccessful in killing Pandavas because he was being saved by their uncle Vidura and the Supreme Lord Krishna himself. During that time, Supreme Lord Krishna, who is not an ordinary man, who himself is Supreme Personality of Godhead, he happens to be in the earth that point in time, and he was ruling another kingdom in Dwarka, which is a neighboring kingdom to Hastinapur. And there was not only that, he was also related to Pandavas in family relationships. How? King Kunti was the queen and he was the wife of Pandu. And Kunti happens to be the aunt of Sri Krishna. Queen Kunti basically is sister to King Vasudev, who is father of Sri Krishna. So in that sense, Sri Krishna is nephew of Queen Kunti and like a cousin brother to the Pandavas. So both as a relative and also upholder of dharma, because he is the dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Okay, so since he is the Supreme Lord, as an upholder of religion, as well as being relative to Pandavas, he was always favoring them, and he himself says that name bhaktya pranashyati, his devotee will never perish, he will always protect them. So he was giving protection to Pandavas in all the sense. What happened? Duryodhana, after all his futile attempts, he cleverly planned a gambling match. And his uncle Shakuni was entrusted to play the match on behalf of Kauravas, and from the Pandava side, Yudhishthir played the match. And in that gambling match, Kauravas have cheated, and with all the cheatings, they have took all the positions. Yeah, they have taken all the possessions of Pandavas, like their kingdom, their all richness, and everything, and so much so that they have lost their dear wife Draupadi also in that gambling match. And Draupadi was a chaste queen to the Pandavas, and Duryodhana, being very wicked, and he was having a lot of hate towards Pandavas, and as a revengeful way, he ordered Dushasan to disrobe Draupadi in that vicious assembly. In the world's history, this is one of the great atrocities, we can say, where in front of all the Kshatriyas, and who are very powerful Kshatriyas, and not only that, some of them are very highly respected and revered because of their good moral conducts, especially like Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya. This attempt of disrupting Draupadi took place. But Lord Krishna saved Draupadi. Whatever it may be, at last, Pandavas were exiled for 13 years. And with all difficulties, you all know, Pandavas have struggled to spend their life in forest. Somehow, they have completed their 13 years of exile. And upon returning, they asked back the kingdom because they have lost it for 13 years. But Duryodhan refused them to return the kingdom. And Krishna himself went to Duryodhan for peace. And he has convinced the Pandavas with just 5 villages. If Duryodhan will spare only 5 mere villages, then also Pandavas can rule those 5 villages and lead their life. Because they are duty bound as Kshatriyas, they cannot do anything else other than ruling. So that was a good enough compromise from the Pandavas side. And Krishna himself, who was the Supreme Lord, he himself sent to Hastinapur as a messenger. Who can be a more eligible than the Supreme Lord himself, who has who was trying to, bring the peace by the compromise. So we can say what is humanly possible and whatever is divinely possible, both has been tried. But Duryodhan was so adamant, he told that, oh, forget about 5 villages, I will not spare even that part of the land which will be occupied by tip of a needle. Duryodhan was very stubborn. And now war seems inevitable. And the war has taken place. Various kings throughout the world, some have taken the side of Pandavas, some have taken the side of Kauravas. And now both of them approached Lord Krishna for their support. And Krishna, being the Supreme Lord, he will not take part in the war. But he has given 2 options. One side will take myself as an advisor, and the other side can take my Narayani Sena. Narayani Sena was very powerful. So Duryodhan took and he chose to take the Narayani Sena, whereas Pandavas, they had Krishna himself on their side. And Krishna played the role of charioteer of Arjuna in that battle. And fighting was about to take place, but Arjuna has shown his uncomfortable, soft-heartedness and unwillingness to fight. And that point in time, Bhagavad Gita was spoken by the Supreme Lord to his dear friend Arjuna. So Bhagavad Gita is a nested conversation. Basically, in the war field, Krishna is speaking this to Arjuna, and the same conversation is being narrated by Sanjaya, who is a secretary to the king, blind king Dhritarashtra. Sitting at the place of Hastinapur, Sanjaya could envision the war context, whatever is taking place, because he was a dear disciple of Srila Vyasadeva, and upon his request, Vyasadeva has given him the celestial vision, Dibya Chakshu, through which he was able to see whatever was happening at Kurukshetra. Kurukshetra, that was the place where this battle took place. And now the scene is set. So this is a quick, brief summary, those who are not very familiar with the Mahabharata. But I'm sure most of you even know more than what we just discussed. Before proceeding to the preface, here is a caution. Publisher and Srila Prabhupada are warning us from the other translations. What other translations have done, basically there are hundreds of translations available for this Bhagavad Gita. Many scholars, politicians, authors, they have commented upon it. But what they have done, in most of their words, they have brushed aside the person Krishna. Why? Because they wanted to make room for their own concepts and philosophies. Okay, so they have taken this religious book because this is highly respected, revered, and even worshipped in every nooks and corners of Bharatavarsha or India, the modern India. So what they have done, these scholars, they have used this as a medium or book to push forward their own concepts and philosophies, and they have brushed aside Krishna. Just an example, in most of their commentaries, they are writing, oh, Mahabharata is a mythology. You know, it's a mythology. So mythology means that which has not taken place. It's just an imaginary. But my dear sir, it's not that. It's the history. It's a history of this Bharatavarsha before 5,000 years ago. And what they have told also, oh, Sri Krishna, he may be a great personality or some anonymous genius who is very good at some poet, you know, because Bhagavad Gita is a song, has been sang by the Supreme Lord. He might be a great poetic device for presenting these ideas, you know, or at best he might be a great historical, he might be a minor historical personage, okay, a great personality, okay, so something like that. But this is a perverted way of understanding. Lord Sri Krishna was not an ordinary human being, although he has come to this world at that point in time. He has descended to this earth in the humanly form, but he was Supreme Lord himself. He was, and he is going to be. But in Bhagavad Gita's message, the actual goal and substance, both, is Lord Sri Krishna only. Because by reading, what do you mean by goal and substance? So substance are like what he is intending to, what is his instructions, okay, to the human society. So that is the substance. And what is the actual goal of that? The goal of that, by understanding this, you will come to a conclusion that it should direct us to develop a relationship with Lord Krishna and a eagerness to come back to him. Okay, that's the reason he is both goal and substance. Whereas In other translations, this is not consistent. But this translation particularly, many upon reading this became devotee and transformed their life and surrendered to Krishna. So the purpose of this translation is to direct the reader to Krishna rather than away from him. And throughout the book, this theme is consistent. So this work is presenting in its true form. Okay. This work is presenting the Bhagavad Gita, a great scripture, in its true form, directing the reader to the Supreme Lord himself, who is the speaker of Bhagavad Gita and as well as its ultimate goal. So here we come to the end of setting the scene. Now we will go to preface. Any question here until now from any of you? Okay, seems none. So let's move to preface. Here, let's look at the layout of the book. How this book is written, Srila Prabhupada is telling, in most of his book, what he does, he first gives the original verse in Sanskrit, like the Devanagari, and then a English version is given. So the reader who are not familiar with Devanagari text, they can read this as well. The pronunciation is Sanskrit, but the writing is in English. Then followed by the English transliterations, which is nothing but word to word meaning of Sanskrit to English. And then the English translations, but based on the parampara understanding. And then the purport, which is the bhavartha of that particular verse or sloka, that is again in English, and this also contains all the parampara teachings through the process of disciplic succession, guru and disciple succession. So that makes the book very authentic and transparent and makes the actual meaning of the verse self-evident to the reader. There is no any twisting or misrepresentations. So this Bhagavad Gita, if you look at, you will find in this sequence for every verse. Whereas when Srila Prabhupada, a brief note, in 1965, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada went to United States. And there basically, he started, and then in 1966, he founded ISKCON, the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. He started from a storefront, okay, and from there, this movement has kind of exploded. And since these teachings are based on Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, he was eagerly desiring to print, Bhagavad Gita as it is edition. So with all the struggle and difficulties, at last one publisher agreed to publish this book but he was unwilling to publish the entire book. He thought this book will be so big, so he cut short the original manuscript of Srila Prabhupada, which was almost 1000 pages, so he cut short to 400 pages only. But then first publication took place, and the book was so popular that again the publisher came back to Srila Prabhupada and told, oh, now let's publish, we are willing to publish your entire book. Then Prabhupada became very happy, And the book which we are going to read, this is the original manuscript of Srila Prabhupada, containing all these, all the contents of his manuscript, which he was intending to present. So here you see a great accommodative character we can learn, So Srila Prabhupada, it's not that, although he was unhappy at that point in time, because many of the translations and purpose to some of the key verses will be also missing, because 1000 pages, when it will be brought down to 400, not everything can be contained there. So he was not so satisfied, although with this he agreed, because the point was to push the message of Krishna, in whatever way it's possible, depending upon the time, place, and circumstances. And the message was so potent that he was confident that sooner or later the entire book will be published, and this happened so. In whatever way it's possible, depending upon the time, place, and circumstance. Sorry. Let me share the screen again. This Krishna consciousness movement first took place in America. Although it is an international movement, but America has special privilege. So in a sense, they were lucky. And this movement is genuine and historically authorized, because the essential teachings of this movement is based on Bhagavad Gita as it is, and Srimad Bhagavatam. And in a sense, this is also transcendental because of this. And gradually, this became very popular, and the movement exploded from America to entire nations very rapidly. And when many came to Srila Prabhupada and thanked him for this great literature and for the huge success of this movement, he didn't take any credit for that. He told, oh, original father of this movement is Lord Krishna himself. Who am I? A meager soul, just acting as a medium. And he has given the credit to his dear spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. Just telling, oh, it's the essential teachings of all the Guru Parampara, which I have received from my dear spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So the credit goes to him. He was such a humble personality, Srila Prabhupada, out of humility, he was not taking any credit at all for this. And we, let's say, if we have written any a good article or anything, we used to flash it, in all the platforms of social sites, and time to time looking at how many likes, how many comments, and trying to distribute in all our connections. But such a great presentation of Bhagavad Gita as it is, Srila Prabhupada has done, and it was so much successful, but he was not taking any credit. Oh, credit goes to my spiritual master. If at all I am worthy for any credit, it's for my honesty. For my honesty to represent the Bhagavad Gita as it is, what has been spoken by the Supreme Lord, without any adulterations, without any personal motive to push forward my own philosophy. Such a great personality he was. Lord Krishna is not a ordinary person. Time and again, I am repeating this. Is Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whereas the mundane wranglers, some of the so-called scholarly translators, as per them, in most of their translations, Krishna and his inner spirits are different. Whereas there is no difference between him and his body, his message, the Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila, all are identical because he is the absolute personality. And this position of the Krishna is very difficult to understand unless you are a devotee. For example, if you are not a devotee, you will land up in Vrindavan and will have no appreciation towards that. But if you are a devotee and go to Vrindavan in your devotional eyes, and that will make much more sense to someone who is a devotee. And Prabhupada, here is expressing that scholars, politicians, philosophers, and swamis writing commentary on Srimad Bhagavad Gita without perfect knowledge of Krishna. They might have a lot of knowledge about their own subject, but without having the perfect knowledge of Krishna, when they attempted to comment upon Srimad Bhagavad Gita, they have tried to banish or kill Krishna by such unauthorized commentary. And this is called Mayavada Bhashya. We have discussed in great detail who are Mayavad, who do not believe in the form of the Lord. They are impersonalists. Okay? Lord Chaitanya himself has warned about this, and he told, Mayavadi Bhashya Sunile Hai Sarvanasa. It is a great blunder. Someone will commit a great blunder if you will read this Mayavadi Bhashya, this twisted and tampered presentations. Srila Vyasadeva presented this Vedic philosophy, Vedanta philosophy, for the deliverance of the conditioned souls. But if someone will read Mayavada Bhashya, then he will be certainly bewildered on the path of spiritual guidance. Why bewildered? Because if someone will walk in the path of spiritual, in a spiritual path, then he should be directed to the Supreme Lord, and his ultimate goal should be the abode of Krishna. But instead of that, by bewildering, they will be landing somewhere else in the Brahmajyoti, which is not desired. That's not the ultimate goal. Because Krishna himself is coming to this world, material world, once in a day of Brahma. That means once in every 8.6 billion years. For what? The main purpose is to attract the conditioned souls towards him by his wonderful pastimes, by performing wonderful leelas. And this purpose is stated in Bhagavad Gita. Manmana bhavamadbhatto madhyaji namaskuru. We have to accept it as it is. Otherwise, what is the point of understanding Gita and its speaker Krishna if we do not take this point? And to interpret Bhagavad Gita without any reference to the will of Krishna is a great offense, because it defeats the whole purpose. So in order to save oneself, one must understand Sri Krishna the way it is being understood by Arjuna. And this will fulfill the mission of life. And Krishna consciousness movement is very essential for human society, because it defeats the mundane speculators and make them understand the Krishna's position. There are 5 essential truths spoken in Bhagavad Gita. It's about Ishvara, then Jiva, then Prakriti, then Kala, then Karma. Okay. The Ishvara and Jiva Tattva, this is the first point to understand. Who is the Supreme Lord? What is his position? Where this living entity came from? How he is related to the Supreme Lord? So understanding this relationship is the first point. And for this, to know our actual identity, we should hear this Bhagavad Gita for our own interest. How we are related to the Supreme Lord? We are the eternal servants of the Supreme Lord. Jivera Swarupa hai Nitya Krishna Das. Krishna has himself spoken in 15th chapter, Mamevansha Jivaloke Mamabhuta Sanatana. You are my fragment parts and parcels. So in that sense, it's our ultimate duty to render devotional service, loving devotional service to our Supreme Master Krishna. So our position is servant. And it's not servant only in one life or next life, eternally. Nitya, Nitya Krishna Das. This always we should remember. But in Kali Yuga, people generally think that, material advancement will make them happy. But they don't know that they are being bounded in this attempt. They are getting entangled by the stringent laws of material nature. Okay, this concept we will discuss in great detail when we enter into Bhagavad Gita. Basically, whatever we do here, or what activities we do in our attempt of sense gratifications through our senses, why we do this? Because of search of happiness. So in that attempt, those impressions are getting stored in our mind. And then in future time, these impressions will give rise to some thoughts. And when someone will dwell upon those thoughts, they will develop some emotions in the heart. And that emotions will push someone or prompt someone to do the future activities. So the flow like thinking, feeling, and willing. And when he does that activities, then he will be caught by the reactions of that activity. because every activity will have a reaction. And that future reactions again will bound the person. So like that way, the person is eternally bound by this chain. And the material nature was facilitating, was facilitating the jivas to undergo through these reactions. Reactions are coming to the jiva, a living entity, in the form of happiness or suffering. Okay. So basically, you can say this, the jiva, the independent living entity, they have lost their free will, because whatever you do, those impressions are stored in the mind and they give rise to thought, and then you develop some emotions and that will impel you to act. So where is your free will? So in a sense, you are bound by the invisible strings of the mother material nature. You are not able to perceive this, but actually that's the fact. Okay. So Krishna Bimukh, when we turn our face to Krishna, then we are bound by the material nature. So unless one serves Krishna, he will definitely serve the illusion, the Maya Devi. Okay. He cannot be free from serving. He has to serve. And he will serve. So the best way is that to look at Krishna and serve him. If we will not serve him, we will serve the illusions, our own personal sense gratifications, which is nothing but a false ego. Instead of satisfying instead of satisfying their own material sense, one has to satisfy the senses of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of life. Lord Krishna wants this and he demands this. This is the central point of Bhagavad Gita and Krishna consciousness movement. The central point of Bhagavad Gita and Krishna conscious movement teaches this particular theme. One should take the help of this Krishna consciousness movement and derive greatest benefit for himself by studying this transcendental literature, Bhagavad Gita, as it is. And in turn, he will become the pure devotee of the Lord. And then he can establish his permanent relationship with him, re-establish. Because we all, whether we know or do not know, whether we accept or do not accept, from our internal core, we are the part and parcel of Supreme Lord. We have a relationship with him. Okay, but that is now covered. Okay, we are in a conditioned state. We are not in our truth state. Okay, this is now conditioned. So in that conditioned nature, we are not able to recognize this. But then when we take the help of this movement and when we read Bhagavad Gita, then our true consciousness will be revived. And we'll be able to figure it out. And we'll be able to we will develop a hankering to establish this relationship. Yeah, and slowly, that covering which is hiding us from our true nature, that will be removed. And we will develop an attraction, genuine attraction towards Supreme Lord. And thereby, this can bring the highest perfection to the life. And there we end the preface. So in a summarized way, we have gone through, which we have discussed in all 5 days all along. So we have summarized in a 50 minutes time. Thank you all very much for your patient hearing. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Do you have any question? So who have missed the classes in between, for them it will be a good recap, and then those who are hearing also, for them it is a again rehearsal. Okay, so